Why they want to say that Ishwar Pranidhan is included? That is the problem. The problem is that Patanjali, though has used the word Ishvara, has given a good status of Ishwar Pranidhan by quoting it as an alternative method for the cessation of the mental mortification. But on the whole, the position of Ishwar is not good in Patanjali. He is not doing anything. And so it seems, although I don't agree with that it seems, but still there are people who say, and they come to the conclusion that it seems that there is only a lip sympathy for Ishwar in Patanjali's use. Only in order to call, or in order to be called that I am a theistic philosophy, he has brought the concept of Ishvara and has said that Ishwar Pranidhanadva. Now come to the, I believe that Ishwar Pranidhan is also a very important and very powerful method. Do not think that it is not so powerful. Those who think that Ishwar Pranidhanadva, by saying this, Patanjali has not given much importance to the Ishvara, is not like that. It means that people have come to the conclusion also that even if you don't go to the Ishvara and simply you practice Abhyas and Vairagya, you can get the cessation of the mental mortification. So no need to go for Ishvara. And in this way, Ishvara is just not an important concept for the sake of the whole practice of the yogic curriculum. But it is not like that. If you see the practice of the Kriya Yoga, if you see the practice of Niyam, Patanjali has used this Ishwar Pranidhan thrice. In the context of here as an alternative method, in the context of Kriya Yoga, also in the context of Niyama. Therefore, it cannot be said that Patanjali was not having a very good approach towards the Ishwar Pranidhan. Let us see how important it can be. You know that Patanjali's definition of Ishvara, I am having a lot of problem with the definition of Ishvara. Patanjali's definition is Desha Karma Vipakashayer Aparamrishta Purusha Vishesha Ishvara. It means that Ishvara is that which is ever unaffected, never affected by the klesha. He is never affected by the karma. He is never affected by the maturation of karma vipaka, and also there is no impressions of karma. I don't know why Patanjali had to write such a long sutra for Ishvara. There was not much need for it. If Patanjali would have written simply Klesha Aparamrishta Purus Vishesha Ishvara, what would have been the wrong thing? He is never affected by klesha. You know that we are affected by klesha. And because we are affected by klesha, we have taken the birth. Unless we take birth, we cannot do the karma. For doing the karma, you have to take the birth. So if you are taking birth, then only you can do the karma. I have said also earlier perhaps, and if not, please try to understand that you know that there are 84 lakh of species. 84 lakh of species according to the Indian mythology. And out of these 84 lakh of species, there is also a very nice division. 83 lakh 99,900 or 9,900 something like, excepting the one species. Rest all the species are known as Bhoga Yoni. Could you understand this Bhoga Yoni? Bhoga Yoni means where the species undergo the consequences of their karmas. Is the Bhoga Yoni. It means that it is not performing any action. No new action is being accumulated in the other species, excepting the human being, which is called karma yoni. A human being, besides undergoing the consequences of the past karmas, is also performing the actions and he is accumulating the karmas. And accordingly, the consequences he has to undergo. Now, this undergoing the consequences, when it will again take the human body, nobody knows. Nobody knows what type of karma I have done, what type of karma is being accumulated, what karma will bring what result. That is nothing known to anybody. It is controlled by Adrishta according to Nyaya philosophy. Nobody is knowing that who is controlling. Even God is not controlling this particular karma. Because if God will control, God will be subjected for a lot of criticism. He is favoring somebody, he is not favoring somebody. So God has not taken any responsibility of the karmas. It is said to be managed auto. It is therefore known as autonomous body. It manages itself. Nobody is there to look at that, oh, you are doing wrong, right? There's no. It is managed by self. Now, if Patanjali is willing to say that Ishwar is that concept which is never affected by klesha, can it perform karma? Because for performing karma, he has to take birth. And for taking birth, he has to be associated with klesha. If he is never associated with klesha, how can be the possibility of doing any karma by Ishvara? And if he is not doing any karma, then what is the fun in saying karma vipaka, maturation of karma? Then again karmashaya, klesha karma vipak asair aparam rishta. Well, he wanted only to make it sure for every person that if you think that God is not away only from klesha, is one thing. But when he says he is away from karma, he wanted to say that God is not going to do anything in your favor. Doing means doing karma. He will not be doing anything. Either you punish or reward. Both are the actions. Both are doing the actions. So he is not doing anything. And since he is not doing anything, it is quite away from all sorts of. This is what Patanjali's concept is, perhaps. That's why he has written, if I have to really support the view of Patanjali. But otherwise, I will say that simply Patanjali would have said, Karma paramrishta purus vishesa Ishvara, you could have drawn the same conclusion, but you will draw the conclusion even after reading all those words. Why? Perhaps, again, I am just going to support the Patanjali. You know that in India, I am not knowing what is outside India, so please do not try to correlate these concepts. Just I am saying about the Indian concept. In India, there are two concepts about the God or existence of the God. There are two types of God in India. One God is called mythological God and other God is called philosophical God. Now, if you take into consideration the mythological God is full of immense power. He can do anything. He can undo anything. He can curse you. He can give you boon. He can do anything that he likes, wants, by way of anger or whatever it may be. Even there are some rishis in India, they were very angry and always ready to curse. like that of Durvasa Rishi. He is always ready to curse. Everybody is very much afraid of, if he arrives, he must take care completely. When he becomes very much dissatisfied, he becomes dissatisfied, he will curse. Many demons you might have heard had got lot of big power because of God only. They have given any power they wanted. Any power they wanted without having any understanding that whether this power should be given or not. They have given the power. You know that there is a story in the Puran that Mahadev gave the power to a demon that on whosoever he will put his hand, he will be turned into ashes. You can see that demon, after getting that power from the God, he said, okay, I should put first of all on your head, in my hand. So when you are not there, you will not be giving this power to anybody else. You can imagine that there was no even logic behind what power I am going to give. This is the power, immense power that is found in mythology. But you know that this is very opposite in philosophy, that philosophy doesn't give any type of power to the God. You know, in English there are 3 words for different type of powers of the God. One word is omniscience. Omniscience is that one who knows everything. Nothing is unknown to it. Then there is the second, omnipresent. It is present everywhere. It was present in the past, it is present in the present, and it will remain present in the future also. So omniscience and omnipresent are the 2 great powers of the God. But along with that, there is the third power, which is there according to the mythology with the God, is omnipotence. And you know that this omnipotence concept and the power has not been given to the God. You read any philosophy that you read, you will find that although it is given in some philosophy, especially in the Nyaya philosophy, you will find that God has been given as efficient cause. It is only efficient cause, it is not the material cause, it is efficient cause. But even that power has not been given by Patanjali to the God, to the Ishvara. Patanjali only wants to say that it is the concept which is omniscient and omnipresent, but not omnipotent. क्लेश कर्म विपाकाशेर अपरामृष्टः पुरुष विशेषः ईश्वरः. It is Purush Vishesh, that is the special thing that has been assigned to Ishvara. Ishvara is a special Purusha, and that is why out of the 24 elements, this becomes 25th. And if at all we take into 25 elements, it becomes 26th. Klesh karma vipakaser aparamrishtah. Never associated with, never afflicted with, totally unassociated is the nature of Purush Vishesh, and it is not associated with the klesha, not associated with the karma, not associated with the karma vipaka and asaya. Well, either you make it that klesha, karma vipaka and karma asaya only 3, or you make it 4, klesha, karma and then vipak, karma vipak, and then asaya, karma asaya. Whatever you like, makes no difference in the understanding of Ishvara, that it is not associated. And I have got very clear understanding. According to Patanjali, I am not saying why this has been written. Patanjali himself writes in the 2nd chapter, sutra number I will give you, Sutra number 12. Klesha Mula Karmashaya. When he himself writes that if there is klesh and at the root of the klesh there is the karma, say how and what is the use of writing here again? Such this is I am mentioning this point that it goes against the sutra writing. He could have reduced the sutra by avoiding the use of these words which were not necessary and which has explained it very clearly even in the next sutras or following sutras. I was talking about omniscience and omnipresence. Patanjali has assigned these two qualities to Ishvara. He says, Tatra Niratisayam Sarvagya Bijam. Omniscience means Sarvagya. And there is unexcelled, unsurpassable, the seed of omniscience. Everything he knows, nothing is beyond his knowledge. And therefore, Sarvagya, the word Sarvagya stands for omniscience in English. So, omniscience is there with him. And the second, Purvesham api guru kalena anvachchedat. Where you know that we are all limited by the time. We are all limited by the time because we have been born and it is also decided that we will die. So our existence in this world has been limited. And what is the limit? It may not be known to us, but in any case it is limited. We may not be knowing for how many days, how many years we will be living in this world. But we know that it is limited and one day we have to leave the world. But the case of Ishvara is something different. It is not limited by any time. So it says that he saw Purvesham api Guru. He was the Guru, master or elder, whatever. He have ancients or earlier ones also. And Anavachchedat, indivisibility is not a very appropriate meaning. You can say not limited by. The Ishvara is not limited by the time, and therefore he was the Guru of the earlier ones and he will remain always present. These are the two qualities that has been given to Ishvara. Then the question arises that if he has got no power, then how this Ishvara Pranidhan, if he is not doing anything, he is not going to do anything, then how he is going to help? You know, that is the best answer for this that I can think, that actually Ishvara is an ideal. To reach to that point where you will be also unaffected by kleshas. And if you are unaffected by kleshas, you will not be subjected for the karma vipak or karma asay. So that ideal should be kept in your mind. And Purush Vishesh is just an ideal he has presented before us. That ideal you have to attain. What type of thing that you will think of when you will be liberated? You will also be klesha karma vipaka saira paramrishta. Only difference will be that you were once under the grip or under the kleshas and doing the karmas, but you have become free. You are not aparamrist, you were paramrist. You were under the control, you were under the grip of the kleshas, and now you are not in the grip of the kleshas. So difference between the normal Purush and Purush Vishesh is that we are once bound and have become liberated. Ishvara is never bound, and so no question of its release. This is the fundamental difference between these two, but not more than that. Because qualitatively we become one. There is no difference between the Ishvara and me. This difference will be always remaining, that he is never born, I am born. So जैसे कभी देखा है किसी जानवर को छाप लगा देते हैं, nobody will touch it. Have you seen that? They put a seal on the back of the animal and nobody will touch it. We are all having this seal. When we will be liberated, we will have this seal on us. He was bound and he is liberated. That will be the differentiating point between the Ishvara and us. Now, third question. Perhaps it is all the way that I wanted to understand this. The third question arises. What is the nature of Ishvara Pranidhana? Whether Patanjali has explained it. When we try to understand the word Ishvara Pranidhana, we try to say that complete surrender to the Ishvara. Prakarsena Nidhanam. Complete surrender to the Ishvara. Whether Patanjali also approves this? Whether Patanjali has indicated anything about the Ishvara Pranidhana? Can we say? Can we find out? And actually speaking, if at all we have to find out the Pranidhan concept in Patanjali, from the Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, we will have to take into consideration what is represented or what represents Ishvara, what we have to do with that representing object, and what the result will be there. So the Pranidhan can be understood in 3 sutras. First of all, he says, what is that Ishvara? And says, Tasya Vachakah Pranavah. If at all anything is represented for the sake of Ishvara in this world is nothing but sound, that is Pranava. And it is just a sound. You can see that's why I'm not going into details of what is Pranava, what is Oma, and what is the A, U, Ma, and all these things. I'm not going into such details. That Pranav is Om. Now this Pranav is Om, and what to do with this Om? He says, Tad Japa Tadartha Bhavanam. What you have to do with this Om? You have to recite the Om. I believe that actually Ishvara Pranidhan consists in the recitation of Om. And logically it should consist in like that. Because Patanjali says Ishvara Pranidhanadva, he explains about the Ishvara, he explains about the nature of Ishvara, then he explains what you have to do with it. And Pranidhan is the doing aspect. Before that is the theoretical aspect, what is it? So Pranidhan starts with Tad Japas Tadartha Bhavanam. When you will recite this Om, you will understand the meaning behind it. And not only that, he further says, Tat Tatah Pratyak Chetanadhigamaha Antaraya Bhavascha. Well, so far as the effect aspect is concerned, I am not making any comment on it because I agree with it, whatever he says, there is nothing to disagree. But what I wanted, the question that I had raised was that what is the nature of Pranidhan? And I believe that Pranidhan consists in japa of Om. If you are doing this recitation of Om every day, you are doing Ishvara Pranidhan. Rest of the thing will follow. Rest of the thing will follow as a result of your recitation of Om. There can be various ways of how to recite Om, whether it is to be recited loudly, whether it is to be recited with slow tone and low tone and whatever it may be. There are a lot of researches have been done on this, the ways of reciting Om. There are the ways that you make shorter O and longer Ma. There was the another way that longer O and shorter Ma, and also low pitch sound. And also even now in modern times, this is also being very much promoted by one of the guru, that instead of saying only O and Ma is not correct unless you pronounce all the three sounds from which the Om is constructed. So A, U, Ma, all three sounds should be distinctly pronounced. Have you heard this? There are many such things. Well, I do not agree with this concept also. No need to pronounce separately. A, U, Ma is a Sanskrit word, though it is a sound, it is a Sanskrit word also. And A and U, these are the two vowels. And according to the Sanskrit rule, wherever these two vowels are there, they have to be united. They cannot be separated or remain separate. Just as, for example, you see the name Ram Udasin. Have you seen that anybody saying different separately Ram and Udasin? No, the complete name is said Ramodasin. You know, the Patanjali's commentator is Bal Ramodasin. So Uda A and U should be always combined. And here also in the Om, A and U later is there. This is the vowel, and they cannot remain separately, and therefore they are joined. And I think that I had written this article long back in Kaivaladham, it was published in Yogi Mansas. I had said in that article that the position of Ishvara not doing anything, just like zero. It is not doing anything, it is like zero. But zero is in mathematics is highly powerful number. Though by itself has got no value. But when it is appearing after any number, it increases the face value. And the face value is increased by 10. So is the case with the Ishvara. If you are resorting to the practice of Ishwar Pranidhan, it will increase your face value. And face value, when it is increased, undoubtedly you will be able to get the result as early as possible. So Ishwar Pranidhan is very effective from that point of view. It may not have the value in the sense that it is doing anything or not. It may not be doing anything. So you know that when I say about the God in his philosophy, I used to say that God is so powerless in Indian philosophy that it can't harm you nor it can reward you. Even if you go to the temple, it can't help you. And even if you don't go to the temple, it can't harm you. It cannot give you more than how much you deserve, even a single paise. You will get only to the what you deserve, even if you go daily to the temple. God will not be there to help you. And even if I don't go to the temple, God will have to give me how much I deserve according to my own karmas. So it is not the God who is giving, it is my karmas which are being materialized in the terms of my reward or punishment, whatever I am subjected for. I may be subjected for punishment, I don't know. I may be subjected for reward. But in any case, it is not that God is giving me. God is not giving me anything. I am getting because of my own karmas. I think that I don't want to go in more detail of this. Effect of Ishwar Pranidhan, that is the effect of the recitation of Om, will result into Pratyak Chetana Digama Antaraya Bhavascha. You will be able to know the internal consciousness, inner consciousness, through the recitation of Om. Pratyak Chetana, inner consciousness. Adhigama, understand. This is what is the effect of the Om. But along with that, the other effect that has been said by Patanjali is that Antaraya Bhavascha. The Antarayas will not remain. There will be absence of antarayas. It means that antarayas will not be disturbing you. I was thinking on this point also, and I want to share it with you. Maybe that who have completed course with me, I have not said these things. But these things are not said because the course that I am running here is for giving them an understanding, not confusing. Now they know one thing very clearly, now I can confuse them for the better understanding. So if I am confusing them now, they should accept it very nicely. That yes, these are the things that can also be taught. Try to understand this. Patanjali uses the word chittavritti, and while describing antaraya, he has used the word chittavikshepa. He says, vyadistyan sansay pramadalasya, and then chittavikshepas te antaraya. So he uses the word chittavikshep. Here the word antaraya is appearing. Tatah pratyak chetanadikama api antaraya bhavascha. So antaraya is a technical term which is related to chitta vikshepa. Now see, Patanjali has used only two terms, chitta vikshep and chitta vritti. Commentators have given or added one more word with chitta, that is known as chitta avastha. So there are three terms: chitta vritti, chitta avastha, chitta vikshep. Chitta avastha and chitta vritti, the difference is that chitta vritti is such that changing of one particular vritti to another vritti is very fluent. A frequent change between the vrittis are possible. At present, you may be in the pramana vritti, next moment you can be in the viparya vritti. Very next moment you can be in the vikalpa vritti. There are a lot of this type of possibilities that you can change very, very fluently and frequently. Avastha is a different thing. Patanjali's commentator, especially Vyas, has said that there are 5 stages of mind, 5 stages of chitta. These 5 stages of chitta that Vyas has given, it's based on the dominance of the gunas. You know that there are 3 gunas according to the Sankhyan concept. I will not be involving in the Sankhyan concept, excepting saying you that every guna has some special characteristics. You know that Sattva is light, Sattva is buoyant, Sattva is illuminative. Sattvam lagu prakasakam ishtam, it is also associated with the welfare. Sattvam lagu prakasakam ishtam upastambakam chalam charajah. Rajogun is stimulant and also it stimulates others. It is itself very active and it can activate others also. Always very active. This is the quality of Chala, Raja. And what is the quality of Tamas? Just opposite of Sattva. Sattva is light, Tamas is heavy. Sattva is illuminating, Tamas is darkening, covering. Sattva is heavy and light, I have already told you, it is covering also and it is having the aspect of inertia. So these are the 3 qualities, or these are the qualities of these 3 gunas. And Patanjali says that the person who is undergoing the vrittis are also having the dominance of the gunas in them. And depending on the dominance of the gunas, they perform or they are having the vrittis in themselves. If they are having the vrittis and they are also Rajoguna dominant, their vrittis, their function of the mind will be different. If they are having the mood state, their function of the mind will be little different. It will not be the same. So if a person is always under the mood state, he will be always under the Viparya state. More dominant will be the Viparya. If a person is more having the Rajogun dominant, he will be more under the Vikalpa Vritti. So there are a lot of such possibilities that if you are under which guna you are having dominance, depending on that the vritti also will be functioning in you. Now this is what is the concept that we find. When we see the Chitta Vikshepa, can you say that Chitta Vikshepa is something different from Chitta Vritti? We cannot say that Chitta Vikshepa is different from Chitta Vritti. So Chitta Vritti and Chitta Vikshepa, these are the two terms. Have we ever tried to correlate these two concepts? Don't you think that Chitta Vikshepa is nothing but the effect of or the hyper functioning of the Chitta Vrittis only? So the antarayas that are coming to a person are the result of the particular Chitta Vritti also. There must be a Chitta Vritti which is responsible for a particular type of Chitta Vikshepa. Or if not, one thing that we can work out very easily, we can work out with the concept of Chitta Avastha. And if you see and analyze the Chitta Avastha, you will find that all the Chitta Vikshepas, all, I am not excluding even one, all the Chitta Vikshepas can be explained in terms of chitta and mood state of mind. Whatever the 9 antarayas that has been presented by Patanjali, all these 9 are actually nothing but different aspects of vrittis dominated by Rajogun or dominated by Tamogun. Chitta Vrittis having dominance of Rajogun will give you the dominance or will give you the effect like antarayas, or having dominance of Tamogun will also give you the effect like antarayas. Means, try to understand, here I am coming one more point I wanted to give, and that was coming and that was giving me always saying me, there are not every person who have studied yoga. They are living a very normal life, very simple normal life. They are reacting also to the different situations. When their son is not passing in the examination, they become very angry also. When there is something happening in the office, they become angry. When they are getting some promotion, they become happy. There are various things, they come into contact and then they react accordingly. The mind is also having all these type of vrittis with him. They are also undergoing the concept of Vikalpa. They are also going under the concept of Viparya. All of these things are normal in their life. You know that this is very interesting point. This is the state which is actually can be equated with the state of Vichinna, Chipt, mood, not Vichinna, Vikchipta. A person who is functioning under the dominance of the mind, under the dominance of functioning of the mind is done under the dominance of Sattva, sometime under the dominance of Rajas, sometime under the dominance of Tamas. You are functioning in the same way. You have not practiced asana, you have not practiced any type of pranayam, you have not, whether they are always subjected for antarayas? No. You can see that they are living very normal life also. It means that vrittis can have the normal existence in our life without having much disturbance also. Only thing is that if vrittis are working in our life, we may not be able to get liberation, and the possibility of transmigration is always there to come again and again in this world. But if we are having the dominance of Rajogun and Tamogun, it will start disturbing us and it will be working like antarayas. 9 antarayas will be there. And these 9 antarayas, let us try to understand further. I have just not told you that if you just analyze the 9 antarayas, you can very well explain these antarayas from the viewpoint of the dominance of Rajogun and from the viewpoint of the dominance of Tamogun. You can say from the point of the vritti, you can say that, okay, the Viparya vritti is working, the Vikalpa vritti is working. Like that, you can say that from the, if you try to analyze and try to understand the antarayas from the dominance of the vrittis also. If you can work out, it can be worked out. Because it is the Chitta vritti Patanjali has said right in the beginning. And Chitta Vikshep cannot be something different from Chitta vrittis. It is hyper functioning of the Chitta, hyper functioning of the vrittis, which is supposed to be the Vikshepa, or give rise to or take manifestation in the form of vrittis. Now, coming to the antarayas. Antarayas are 9. Vyadhi, Styan, Sansay, Pramad, Alasya. It is sutra number 30 of chapter 1. Vyadhi, disease. Styan, mental lethargy. Sansay, doubt. Pramad, heedlessness. Alasya, physical lethargy. Avirati, too much attachment. Bhranti darshan, illusory vision. Alapta bhumikatva, unable to attain any stage in the life. Anavasthitatva, unable to maintain any stage in the life. These are the 9 that Patanjali has mentioned. You know that very generally, there are 9 antarayas. But I find that no, actually they are not 9. They are actually mainly working are 6. The first 6 that is known as Vyadhi, Styan, Sansay, Pramad, Alasya, Avirati, Bhranti Darshan, Avirati. Up to Avirati they are working. Up to Avirati we find that these 6 are highly disturbing. You know that actually these different type of mental conditions that has been mentioned by Patanjali, he had observed the people. You know that when you require something too much with great intensity to attain, and when you are thinking of the whether I will be able to attain it or not, all these problems will come to you. You will be suffering from Vyadhi, you will be suffering from Sthyana, you will be suffering from Alasya, you will be suffering from Avirati, you will be suffering from Sansay and all this. Try to analyze yourself, your situation. Whenever you are in so much need of attaining certain thing in the world and you want to get it, either your promotion or anything it may be, either the service or whatever. You are in dire need, I want. And then when it works as I want, you are so much attached with it, it is avirati. Rati is attachment, virati is non-attachment, and avirati is not non-attachment. Means too much attachment. Then when you are thinking of that I will get it or not, you will not be believing in anybody, oh, that person is not good. You will doubt that person. And at that point of time, when you are thinking of the problem and the thing that you want too much intensely, and at that point of time, somebody says to you, please do this work for me, you will not be doing. You will not pay any heed to that, what he wants. Nor you will get any type of enthusiasm to do any other work. These are the different situations that arise, and that Patanjali had only observed it. And after observing, Patanjali has given a technical term for each and every problem. And that's why he says that these are the 9 antarayas. He says, Vyadhi, Styan, Sansay, Pramad, Alasya, Virati, these are the 6 that are the mainly functioning in our main this antarayas. And what it leads to, if these six are working, it leads to Bhranti Darshan. We will not be able to see the truth. We will not be able to see the things as they are. And they remain as Bhranti Darshan. Illusory vision, we will develop illusory vision. And because of that illusory vision, now there are the two stages that will be there. I will not be able to maintain the stage that I have achieved in my life, or I will not be able to attain in a new stage because of the situation of the mind. So they will return or translate into two problems. It will not allow you to maintain what you are, and it will not allow you to go further. It will always object your progress. Patanjali says that you will be having all these problems, and all these can be understood in terms of the chips and mood, and you will find that very well it can be applied, and you can make a good relationship of chips and moody state of mind with this of Chitta Vikshepa. But Patanjali wants to say that no, I am coming to a different type of understanding. You know that a person is there in front of me. If I ask you whether Klesha is working in him or not, what will be your answer? You will say, yes, he is here. I can see him. He is born. So Klesha is there. Without Klesha, how can he be there in the world? So Klesha is there in him. First of all, it is because of the Klesha he is here. Now, it is also that whether he is suffering from Klesha to the extent, now it will be depending on his behavior. Unless he behaves, you will not be able to understand. When you will see that, okay, he is doing too much asmita or too much attachment for his life and all these things, you will say, oh, Kleshas are very udar condition in him. Very liberal. Because Kleshas also have the 4 stages. Prasupta tanu vachinna udara. It is an udar state. But it is very subtle. A person is full of ego is very subtle. Also, sometimes the person who is full of ego, he also pretends and gives the indication of that he is full of ego by his appearance, by his mood of moving and behaving. You can say that, oh, he is a person, seems to be very egoistic person. Only because of his movement. But it is very, very subtle. By seeing the person and not giving you any indication through his movement, you cannot say that the person is suffering from Klesha. You will only say that yes, Klesha was there. Because of the Klesha he has come in this world. That's all. Because whether Klesha is functioning in him and disturbing him or not, we cannot say. So is the case, but Klesha is very subtle. Comparatively, the vrittis are less subtle. Not so subtle like Klesha. But still it is not visible from externally. From outside you can't visible. It is again subtle. But grosser in comparison to Klesha. If at all we have to make a relationship between these three, the very subtlest is the Klesha. Less subtle, that is towards the grosser, is the vritti. And then Chitta Vikshepa. Again, a person suffering from Chitta Vikshep, it cannot be very well identified from his external behavior unless, but he is more prone for his external behavior. So his external behavior is so easy to be caught. But still, if he has not given any external behavior, he is thinking in the mind and about his intense desire for certain things, and he is inside the mind is highly disturbed. You cannot understand by seeing him. Still it is subtle. But Patanjali says that though the Chitta Vikshepas are subtle, if a person is suffering from Chitta Vikshep, undoubtedly he will give an indication which are externally recognizable. That will have the external symptom. And these external symptoms will undoubtedly make it clear that a person is suffering from chitta vikshepas. And these external symptoms are known as dukkha, dormanasya, angamejayatva, swas praswas. This is sutra number 31 of chapter 1. Dukkha, dormanasya, angamejayatva, swas praswas. Now, these are the 4 symptoms. And undoubtedly, while Patanjali speaks about it, he makes it very clear that they are the external symptoms. They are not subtle, they are gross. And he has used very nicely the word that if a person is suffering from vikshepa, these 4 symptoms are bound to come in him. Therefore, he uses the word vikshepa sahabhuva. They are concomitants. If a person is suffering from vikshepas, these 4 symptoms are bound to come to him. It is not that he is suffering from vikshepas and these 4 symptoms will not come to him. He may hide his vikshepas, but he cannot hide these sabhuvas that will be an external symptom recognizable from outside also. And these are the 4 symptoms known as dukkha, pain, dormanasya, angamejayatva, swas praswas. Dukkha means pain, misery. He will be always in some problems. And you know that such a person who is having misery, whosoever comes to him, he will start speaking about his misery. Have you seen such persons? There are many such persons. If you go to him, you will avoid after some days. I will not go to him. He will start speaking again the same thing. The misery is so much there that he will go on speaking about his miserable condition. Second is, he will be mentally depressed. Mentally depressed only means that he will not be getting any type of enthusiasm for any work. So depressed to do with for any work. But these are the mental condition. Undoubtedly, the rest 2 conditions, though it seems to be physical, they are actually because of the mental condition. And they are known as angamejayatva and swas praswas. Do not misunderstand that they are only physical condition. Angamejayatva is the meaning is the tremor in the body, shaking of the body. The body will start shaking. And it also starts shaking because of chitta vikshepas. So it is the mind which is compelling it because of its mental condition that it reflects on the body in the form of tremor. And so also the 4th one, that is known as swas praswasa. Well, Patanjali has written only swasa praswasa, means that respiration, inhalation and exhalation. He has not given any other word, but by the use of or by the indication of the 3 earlier symptoms that Patanjali is saying, on the basis of that we can conclude that when he is saying about the respiration, he is undoubtedly mentioning the disturbed respiration, not the normal respiration. So what he wants to say, as a result of the hyper-functioning of the mind, or because of the too much intense, thoughtful condition of the mind, the person will be suffering from the dukkha, dormanasya, the pain, the mental depression, and then angamejayatva, that is the tremor in the body, and also the swas praswas, that there will be disturbance in the respiration. Now, he does not say that what type of different disturbance will be there, but disturbance will be there. And this is very interesting point, that Patanjali's concept of therapeutic approach is available here. The first approach, first indication that Patanjali had the therapeutic approach in his presentation. He has talked about the Chitta Vikshepa, and then he is talking about the problem that is arising in the physical also. You know that around 75 years or 100 years back, I am going little more, but 100 years you can keep, that people were thinking it is a body which is becoming sick. But only since last 100 years or 75 years, doctors have come to the conclusion that it is not the body which is becoming sick first, it is the mind which is becoming sick first, and then it reflects on the body. And that's why the word like psychosomatic disease has come into existence. Otherwise, diseases were only somatic, only physical. But people have come to conclusion that no disease is purely somatic, it is psychosomatic. Mind becomes sick first and then it reflects on the body. So when you are sick, when a person is sick, you know that there are many diseases which are identified as psychosomatic diseases. Like diabetes, it is psychosomatic diseases. Asthma, it is also psychosomatic disease. Although people have found out that there is the genes problem also, that it is coming from the genetic disease. But even if it is genetic disease, people have come to the conclusion if you have controlled the mind, even if these are genetic, they will not arrive to you, provided you have taken care of your mental condition. That which is genetic is bound to come to you is not the case. But if you have left yourself, have not taken care of your mind, not taken care of living in a very good, calm, quiet mind, or in a way, we can say the yogic way of mind, yogic condition of the mind, you are very much susceptible to catch the disease which is genetic in your family. But it is not the genetic condition which is responsible for bringing disease to you. It is your own fault that has brought this genetic condition to you. So, dukkha, dormanasya, angamejatva, swas, praswas are the four important conditions that are necessarily come to the person as a result of the hyperfunctioning of the mind. And I believe that dukkha, dormanasya are the mental condition directly. Dormanasya, angamejatva and swas, praswas, you know that I don't say much of this chitta vikshepa, but chitta vikshepa is happening several times in our life. Irrespective of that, I have told you about the chitta vikshepa, that when you desire something intensely, then only the chitta vikshepa situation will come. No, chitta vikshepa can come also in other way. Have you become angry too much sometime? And have you noticed that what is the condition of your body? What is the condition of your mind? What is the condition of your respiration? It is the mental condition with which you are suffering. It is anger is the mental condition, not the physical condition as such. But it immediately reflects upon the body. And here comes the Hatha Yoga, where it says that the mind and breathing has got very close relationship. If mind is disturbed, breathing is disturbed. If mind is cool and calm, breathing also will. If breathing is cool and calm, mind also will remain calm. And these are the things that we can say that yes, Patanjali was very much successfully presenting a concept of therapeutic approach in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra, which perhaps is not taken care of or not given much importance. But this is the therapeutic approach. I stop it here.